Welcome back to Duels Down Under for all your deck profiles, live dueling action and discussion videos just like this one. Today's topic, the 2019 ban list. Stay tuned for more. Okay, YouTube legends, let's talk October 2019 ban list. Only 2 cards were put to 0 status on the list. We have Guard Dragon, Agapane, and Nightmare Mermaid. This video, I'm going to talk about each of the cards that were shifted, placed on the list, taken off the list, and then at the end, wrap up how I think it's going to affect the new metagame moving forward. Guard Dragon, Agapane, probably not the biggest problem at the moment, but when it was seeing play in the meta, I do believe that Agapane was the problem out of the 3 cards. LP and Pisty were used and utilized quite effectively, but I don't think they had that negate status that Agapane does, bringing a card straight out from the extra deck. The Rocket and Dragon Link strategy might be impacted by this, but I still think that those decks in the future, with Striker Dragon coming out in the next set, they'll still be viable options in the meta moving forward, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Nightmare Mermaid, on the other hand, that card definitely needed to go. Orcust players and Orcust opponents alike will definitely agree that Nightmare Mermaid should have been on the chopping block. Orcusts are now no longer and any 2 monsters makes the Orcust combo. They need to use a strategy such as maxing out on Orchestrated Return, and they're going to have to use more archetype specific cards to actually get their plays moving forward. The biggest thing about Nightmare being hit is the Mermaid being hit. I should say that the engine is not splashable anymore. We still might see it pop up every now and again. As long as decks have discard outlets like the other Mermaid cards, there is still a chance that we're going to see the Orcust combo pop off, but it's definitely not as consistent as bringing out Mermaid and special summoning Nightmare from the deck. We will see it, we won't see it as much, and it's definitely not going to be as consistent. Orcust are still a very powerful deck, don't get me wrong. Pure Orcust, I think we're going to see them shift back into the meta, whereas everything else that was playing Orcust as a bit of an extra engine, I think we're going to see that phased out for the pure variants. Let me know what you think down below. Should they have banned more cards? Do you think Nightmare, Mermaid, and Agapane were likely targets to be banned? Do you think something else should have happened to them? So the limited cards now, I think we need to have a look at Sky Striker, Mecha, Widow, Anchor. Yes, such a devastating card. It is a crackdown. It is an infinite impermanence all in one card. It adds spell to the graveyard, and they can recur it from the graveyard using either Kagari or their single copy of Multi-Roll. A lot of people would have been hoping Engage was the card that got hit, but I think Mecha, Widow Anchor going to 1 will actually limit what the deck is able to do moving forward. Those late game Widow Anchors are quite devastating to some strategies, but now the player playing that Sky Striker deck is going to have to really use and manage their resources effectively to make sure that they're not going through too many cards all in 1 or 2 turns. YuGiOh is still a 1, 2, 3 turn game, but those the decks that do like to grind, such as Sky Strikers, rely on having multiple copies of Widow Anchor to be able to not only negate effects, but to use the resources from their opponent's side of the field to link up into bigger monsters. The resource game has been affected for strikers. The deck is not dead. I'm actually really looking forward to see just what other people can do when they're putting this deck together moving forward. The semi-limited list saw a couple of cards move. No, only one card, I should say, Dark Arm Dragon. Well, I didn't play during Telidad format. I heard good stories about it. I've heard bad stories about it. All I know is that for me, I own a couple of copies of the Ultimate Dark Arm Dragon, and the price of those over the last couple of days has gone astronomically high. We're looking at plus 200 just in a couple of days. I am a fan of the Tell a Dad strategy. I'm wondering if there are some players out there who might be able to bring the strategy back to life in the modern day format. I'm hoping, and I'll be checking out on YouTube for those players who actually do. But I don't think that we're going to see it splashed in the dark decks that often. It is powerful, but the conditions behind its summon probably not good enough in today's game. Again, down below, let me know what you think. Cards that are no longer on the list. Now, this one, there are quite a few, but I don't think there were any real surprises, except for maybe one that we'll get to in a second. We have to go through the cards individually to talk about how they're going to actually impact the meta, but if you're anything like me, you saw the list and you realized that it didn't actually, I don't think it's going to be that pivotal for what's going on in the new format. Chaos Emperor Dragon, Envoy of the End, is the first one. It's been errated and hasn't been played since coming off the list. Whether it's at 1, whether it's at 3, I don't actually think it's going to matter. People were playing BLS for a little while, but we still have 3 copies of Levianeer to play around with, and I think that that's probably what people are going to gear themselves towards. After the errata, Envoy of the End is definitely not the card that it once was. The biggest shock on this list, and the one I'm probably most happy for, is Destiny Hero Malicious coming from semi-limited status to 3. It reintroduces Dark Warrior strategies as well as raises the ceiling on the new hero strategy. We know that we've been leaked hero support. They've been given hero support in the new Legendary Duelist set. And I'm wondering now what the ceiling on that strategy is going to be, and can it maybe push up into the top tier, top 1.5 tier status for the first time in such a long time. They do struggle going first. Maybe with an extra copy of Mali, they'll be able to finish on a different first turn board that's going to actually offer some more utilization of better resources and actually give them an opportunity to last a turn until they can potentially go into that OTK play that we know they're famous for. We know that Gumblar is no longer a card, so we don't have to worry about those 4 to 6 card hand loops, but I am expecting to see the other topologic dragons used in the meta with this potentially as well. It'll be interesting to see what kind of strategies people are going to be using with Malicious. Will it be splashed into other strategies just because it is a free monster on board when that first copy goes into the graveyard? If it is abused too much, I do think it will earn its spot back on the list. I guess we'll just have to wait until January to find out. Ace of the Heavenly Monarch. Now, it is such a powerful card, and I do think it does increase the playability of the Monarch strategy significantly. However, while Pantheism is still at 1 on the list, the deck is still far too inconsistent to really have any huge impacts on the meta. It does improve the playability in the rogue status, but I don't think we're going to see it up on those top tables. Monarch players are out there rejoicing that she's come back off the list, but I do think that Pantheism, a victim of circumstance in the format that it was banned in, will still take a while for that Monarch strategy to be consistent and playable in the top tiers again. Domain Monarchs, when they were at full power, were a great deck. Domain allowing locking their opponents out from the extra deck, that attack boost. Of course, Monarch's Erupt is a huge card, and Monarch Stormforth is back at 3, and it's such a devastating card as well. What do you think? Do you think Monarchs are going to be played a little bit more moving forward? Are we going to see extra deck Monarchs maybe return? Let me know. E-Hero Stratos. It took 3 lists and about 10 years for Stratos to come back to unlimited status in our game. I don't really understand the difference between 2 and 3 copies, except he'll be a little bit easier to go into to start the game with. He wasn't hard to get with the amount of searching that heroes can do anyway, and he still dies to a well-timed Effect Veiler or Infinite Impermanence. So while E-Hero Stratos is such a powerful card, it isn't a once per turn effect. it can be easily negated with the cards that we have in today's meta. So potentially, now that Malicious is back at 3 and Stratos is back at 3, I'm hoping, I am a huge hero fan, I have the deck ready to go. I'm wondering if it will actually push into those top tiers. Let me know what you think. Are you a hero player? Do you like the way the deck runs? And do you think they'll be able to come back into the meta now that they've got these cards unlimited on the list? Inzektor fans have been waiting a long time for this, but I think from Konami it's too little too late in regards to the release of Inzektor Dragonfly back to 3. People probably still have this deck sitting around from 2012, and they might pick it up, have a bit of play with it, and realize that it's just not going to cut it in the meta today. It'll be a little bit of fun. I have this deck sitting around somewhere. I might put it back together and see what it can still do, but I'm not under the impression that it's even going to be able to hit those middle tiers, maybe 4 or 5 or 6 status. It is simply a fun deck. Inzektor Hornet is a good card. It will get that popping off, but still not enough to do any real damage. Shurit coming off the list will make Necros players happy, but until Unicorn is back to unlimited status, I don't think Necros are going to be at those top tables very often. It's definitely a regional topping strategy like we've seen in the past. Maybe it'll make the bubble or just hit that top cut in some of the smaller YCS events around the place, but I just think the deck, we've moved on from Necros, while still good, while still consistent and still quite powerful, unless they are at full power and negating those extra deck monster effects. I don't think they'll be able to cut it. We need Unicorn back fully, and then maybe Necros might be able to keep up with the game. But until then, I don't really think it's a discussion that we can have in terms of whether or not the once tier 0 deck will be able to make its way back into the 2019 metagame. Again, another one of my favorite cards of all time, El Shaddoll Construct. This one holds a place in my heart because I only started playing the game, I think, in 2013, 2014, and the Duelist Alliance set was one of the first sets that came out when I started the game. And I remember pulling a couple of ultis over a few weekends when I was going to locals and holding on to these ever since she was banned. So these are up in my folders somewhere, and fingers crossed that they can still retain that value with the structure deck coming out when we eventually get it. At the moment, I don't think Shaddoll is a strategy that you can play on its own. It is simply a strategy that might be teched in as an engine with something else just to use those powerful graveyard effects that the Shaddoll decks are famous for. Shaddoll Fusion is such a great card, letting you send from deck when the opponent controls an extra deck monster. And Construct coming back really opens the door to removal of those really beefy monsters your opponent has on the field that you might not be able to get rid of in any other way. Coupled with El Shaddoll Winder, I do believe that Shaddolls might make an appearance back, but they will not be as powerful as people would like them to be moving forward. But hopefully, when we do get the structure deck, probably next year sometime, there is some good power cards in there that are really going to bring Shaddoll back to the forefront of the meta. As long as Konami do a better job than they did with Fire Fist, I think we'll be okay. Royal Tribute is another one to talk about. It's a powerful card, don't get me wrong, but whether it's a 2 or whether it's a 3, I don't really think it's going to affect how many people are playing Gravekeepers. The deck is so slow now, it's not what it used to be, and control decks have moved past that. The Gravekeeper strategy isn't fast enough to actually keep up. It takes 1 or 2 turns to set up, and then they might be able to get into some kind of loop where they're doing some damage to the opponent. But until then, they're basically one monster on the board, Necro Valley face up on the field, and potentially a negate in the back row. In my opinion, that's not really enough. Now, the sleeper change to the list, I think, was Super Rejuvenation. Did Konami do this to support the Dragon Link strategy, or maybe to bring the Rockets back in the meta? But I'm not actually quite sure why this was brought back. It is a powerful card, and in the Dragon Ruler format, sorry. In the Dragon Ruler format, I think that it was a busted card, but now I don't really think it's going to help out too much. Strike Dragon is getting released in the upcoming Chaos Impact and will be utilized in the Dragonling strategy, in the Rocker strategy. So maybe it's a bit of a hand for these cards now. Rather than Super Rejuvenation, though, I would have preferred Konami maybe moving the other Dragon Rulers from Forbidden to 1. I think simply because they're better cards. I can't really see Super Rejuvenation being played. I do know it was a huge boost to the values after it was released on the list, but it'll be interesting to see after next weekend and the first weekend of the new format, are we going to see that card potentially teched into any decks that are being played? So that's all the cards. I think maybe I'll give you a few final thoughts about where I think Konami should have gone, where the format might be heading in the future, and what the metagame might look like. So the list put in check the problem decks, I think. Orcust were dominant. They were winning. I think they won 2 or 3 of YCS's pretty much back-to-back, or they got a second and 2 firsts. So Nightmare Mermaid getting hit was really good. I think Lunalight Orcust is still a deck, but it will be a little bit harder to pull off all of those combos in one single turn like they were previously. Sky Striker getting their hit that they did, I don't think they're going to go away. I think they will be still quite a force to be reckoned with. Players will adapt like they have done. They still have the ability to use There Can Be Only One, maybe some more back row, maybe a more control variation going forward is what we're going to see. But please don't count Sky Strikers out. Thunder Dragons, strangely enough, were not touched at all. People had moved away from the Guard Dragon strategy since Nibiru came out in the Megatins, and I think that it's really important to keep in mind that Colossus is still at 3, and having that Thunder King Ryo effect, not allowing anyone to search their deck, is such a devastating effect in this meta. Orcas still match up quite well because everything either gets sent out from the graveyard or special from the deck or set from the deck. So that's not too much of an engine. I just think while the Guard Dragons were hit and the problem card taken care of, Thunder Dragon is still out there. They should be dominating the meta this format. Salomon Great, probably the most overlooked deck in the current format, I think. The last ban list absolutely neutered the deck, but it was still in the top table. So if you take that in mind and the fact that the deck wasn't hit in this list, does that push it back up closer to that tier 1 status again? I guess I want to know what your thoughts are down below. What decks do you think are going to be in the top tables at this upcoming meta? And do you think any of the new stuff coming out is going to heavily affect the metagame? Are we going to see a shift in what people play when we do get Chaos Impact in a few weeks' time? But until then, I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. Quite a simple list. I think it did what it needed to do, but I still think Konami could have done a little bit more. That's all I have for you today. Short discussion about the ban list. Again, if you liked what I was saying, hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell button, get notified when I've uploaded new videos. Like the video, share it with your friends, and of course, leave a comment down below with what you thought about the list. And please, don't hesitate to ask any questions. Thanks for tuning in. This is Have a great week.